when you're staring into the abyss of want, you're staring at that darkness, which is what you would like to have, that you believe to be good and right and godly. Jesus doesn't abandon you, but He whispers to you a promise. Psalm 84:11. No good thing will He withhold from them who walk uprightly. Now, don't misinterpret this. Jesus doesn't say to you, you'll always get what you want as long as you behave. That's not the proper interpretation. Jesus is whispering this. If it's good for you, trust me, I'll supply it in my perfect timing. If it's good for you. And it's in that love that we can be content. When faced with disappointment and loss, the disappointment of a loved one dying, the loss of health, believers have been gifted 2 Corinthians 4:17. Listen to this promise that Christ gives us, and it aids our contentment. It anchors our trust. Listen to this promise from the Apostle Paul. This light and momentary affliction is working in us a far more exceeding and eternal weight of glory. This doesn't mean that we don't hurt. It doesn't mean that the afflictions we're experiencing, the disappointment, the loss isn't real. It doesn't mean that God is indifferent or that He doesn't care. It means that every one of our light and momentary afflictions are purposeful. Towards what end? Our eternal glory. So we got a song that we love to sing. It will be worth it all when we see Jesus. Our trials will seem so small when we see Christ. One glimpse of His dear face, all sorrow will erase. So bravely run the race till we see Christ. Isn't it good of Christ to give you and I these promises that help anchor our contentment? Because the struggle for contentment is real, isn't it? It's real. How about another? When battling the frustrations of poverty or the burden of wealth, believers remember 1 Samuel 2:7. The Lord makes poor, and the Lord makes rich. The Lord brings low, and the Lord lifts up. And this doesn't mean that we should give up on improving our situation, that we should budget, that we should save, that we might need to work a little bit of a side hustle. It doesn't mean any of that. What it does mean is that God remains sovereign over all things, including your income. And we can take comfort in that. I want to address one more, because I think this is where we all live. When tempted to compare our fate with others. You know what I'm talking about? When tempted to look at someone else's life, someone else's blessings, someone else's calling, someone else's possessions, someone else's relationships. When tempted to compare our fate, how providence has worked in our lives with how providence has worked in someone else's lives, believers hear afresh the voice of our Lord speaking to Peter. John 21:22. Here's what our Lord said. If it's my will that He remain, until I come, what is that to you? You follow me. This doesn't mean that we have no interest in God's plan for others. What it does mean is that ours is to remain focused on being faithful to God's plans for me.